Hello, friends, and welcome to Lesson 2 of Unit 4, which is on policy implications and employment trends. So, what we are going to discuss under this would be policy approaches, policy implications, employment trends, and hiring trends. Now, when we talk about the policy approach, India has been looking at three things since the very beginning. Number one is using the surplus labor through extensive growth. With the economic growth, you try to open up the things so that the surplus human capital, the labor which is there, can be utilized. Number two is moving away from the agriculture to non-agriculture sectors. So intersectorial transfer. So the policy approaches have been towards that. And third is just to change the pace and composition of industrialization because the world has moved very fast, whereas India has not been able to cope up with that pace. And also all the advancement, not only in the technological areas, but even other ones. So these have been the three approaches, policy approaches India has been following. If we look since independence from 1947 to 2017, that means independence to 2.5 trillion economy. We started with the Minimum Wages Act to Goods and Services Tax 2017. So it has been a long journey. And there have been major 70 policies which India has made, keeping in view the approach, the three approaches which we discussed. So as on today, if we look at India, so what is there in the policy framework as on today? So today the government is looking at three things. It is looking at a growth which is a resource efficient growth. That means not a short term or dependent growth, but in terms of the resources which India has. So making those resources more efficient to get that growth. Second is enhancing competitiveness and thereby enabling the job creation. And third is investing in the human capital. Existing workforce has to be skilled as per the latest tools and techniques. So that is the third, upskilling the workforce. So resource efficient growth, competitiveness and job creation, and third is upskilling the workforce. Now, as a result of that, you can see the implications in the policies which have come up over a period of time. So these are the 8 areas which the different governments have picked over the decades in order to get the three things which we talked about: education, rural livelihoods, rural water supply and sanitation, rural roads, health, nutrition, agriculture, and energy. We did talk about poverty, unemployment, and inequality. So, what are the policy implications which are there? So, that is where in these 8 areas we try to use the approaches which can eradicate or reduce the poverty, increase the employment, that is the job creation, and also to upskill the workforce. Now, the current government has come out with a strategy with a policy approach paper, New India at 75, 2022 paper on policy. So, they have come up with the policy drivers, 11 areas. So, that starts with the economic growth, employment and labor reforms, technology and innovation, industry, doubling farmer income in terms of modernizing agriculture, policy and governance, value chain and rural infrastructure. In that regard, a recent step which you saw, which has been opposed by the farmers though, has already been taken. Financial inclusion, housing for all, travel, tourism and hospitality, and lastly the minerals. If we talk of the employment trends, unfortunately there is a falling trend in the job creation, especially after 2014. Now, if we look at the growth of total employment in terms of urban and rural area, if you look and you compare the period from 2000 2005, that is 5 years, and then from 2005 to 2010. So if you compare these first 5 years with the second 5 years, so what you see is with the blue one, in the rural area, the job creation, the total employment was to the compound rate, growth rate is 4%. Whereas if I talk in the rural, in the urban side, it is 1.92. Male and female, there is a big gap. There is no growth in terms of the female employment, and that we discussed earlier also. So, in case of the males, again, there is a falling trend. So, the total employment in the first 5 years, which was 2.66, this job creation has gone down to 0.83. So, that's not a good sign. Now, if we say the GDP and the job creation, because it goes with the GDP, but it has been a jobless growth of the GDP. Whereas the GDP was going up, if you look at 2015, it is almost between 7 and 8, whereas jobs have gone down. So that 14-15 job creation trend is going down, although the GDP has not. So the only two sectors, if we look at sector-wise growth, only two sectors which have been creating jobs and have been in the front are finance and IT sectors. So if you look at finance sector, 15.2 analyzed growth, whereas the IT, if you look at the quantum, it's huge, 4.8. It has been doing well since the very beginning. If we talk of the hiring trends, firstly we need to understand the agriculture and non-agriculture sector and some of the trends which we had been seeing earlier from I would say 2000 to 2005 and then from 2005 to 2012. So if I talk of non-agriculture job creation, 7.5 million per annum jobs have been created, and the same 7.5 million per annum was from 2005 to 2012. If I look at the agricultural sector, remember the approach that we wanted to shift from agriculture to non-agriculture sectors. So from 2000 to 2005, 20 million people have been added to the agriculture workforce, whereas 36 million people have been withdrawn or have withdrawn from the agriculture sector, which is a historical first, 36 million. In terms of the earnings, from 2000 to 2005, rural wages have been stagnant because there has not been any appreciable increase in the job creation. From 2005 to 12, rural and urban wages they have gone up, and absolute number of poor fell. Absolute number of poor fell from 2005 to 2012, right? So that was first in the history of our country. If I look at people moving from agriculture to non-agriculture that we discussed, so which are the sectors which have been contributed in terms of the skill set experience? As I said earlier, it is basically, if I go into the financial sector, insurance sector, 28%, and IT sector, 28%. The BPO during that time was, although it's not a long term because we have moved to KPO now, telecom sector, so all these sectors, but banking and oil and gas have gone down in terms of the hiring during this period. This is 2015-16 I'm talking. Now the last slide I would like to dedicate to go into the details of the employment trends long run. So if I look from since the beginning what has been happening, so there are three key things which we can notice. Number one is there has been a gradual decline in the share of agriculture. As I said, from 2005 to 12, 36 million people withdraw from the agriculture sector. The second key thing is there has been a growth in non-agriculture employment, but unfortunately that has been in the informal sector. So we are now trying to formalize the non-agricultural sector. So construction sector, we have done a lot of things, and slowly a lot of policies have come to make it more formal. So the key question is absence of growth in formal non-agriculture employment, how we can increase that. So our approach, our policies are oriented towards that now. And the third key fact which over the long run we have seen is strong industrial output growth, because we have been able to increase the competitiveness of our goods and services, mostly the goods. So as a result, the capital accumulation is there, so that will lead to job creation over a period of time. So as I said, informal sector, non-agriculture employment is on the rise, but we want to have more in the formal. So if you look at the informal and formal sector, in which our workforce has been employed, so the informal sector has been rising from 75 to 86, whereas the formal sector has gone down. So we need to work on that. So this is all about the policy implications and employment trends in India, which we should know. If I have to summarize, we talked about policy approaches, implications, employment trends, and hiring trends. Here is a small quiz for you. Question number one is, name any one policy approach that we discussed. Job creation trend has been rising or falling since 2014. Which two sectors are giving the maximum employment? I think these were simple quiz questions. You might have answered. Compare your answers. The policy approach, one of them is investing in human capital, reskilling, upskilling the workforce. Job creation trend has been falling since 2014. Two sectors, finance and IT, were providing maximum employment in India. That is all from my side. If you have any questions, feel free to write to me. If you want to do some further reading, this is a good article to read from Niti Ayog. Thank you very much. See you next time with the next lesson. Bye for now. Shabba khair.